was it? There you go. So the issue that's happening in Spotify here. The question here is the issue with Joe Rogan and Neil Young. Now, in particular, Joe Rogan. Now, obviously, Joe Rogan is a very popular podcaster. I've watched his several shows in when he was still in YouTube before he transferred to what do you call this? He transferred to Spotify here, and obviously $100 million paycheck is a pretty sum to convince you to jump ship and go to the other platform here. But the main issue here is in his discussion, he talks to a lot of people here, and when the pandemic started, he discussed. Obviously, he would continue to discuss a variety of topics, including COVID-19. But one of the main concerns here is regarding how he practices or deals with the virus itself. And question here is it significant? But what do you call this? Obviously, there are a lot of listeners thinking that what he's saying is true, would try to follow it, which is not backed up by research here, which is obviously has caused a lot of backlash on his side because, similar to the discussion we talked about, with how Novak Djokovic tried to play in the Australian Open, being irresponsible, trying to get away of a technicality in terms of giving him an exemption, which is, he should have known before going in, and the solution which Mr. Rafael Nadal, who is now the champion, congratulations to him, mentioned that if he got vaccinated, he would have been able to allowed to play, and same goes here. So there's been study, obviously, as a whole population, there has to be a consensus as to what's the best policy to deal with certain issues with poverty, with hunger, in this case with the COVID situation. And thinking that your choice is the best one, obviously people might get the wrong impression, so to speak. Anyway, let's see here. Spotify chose Joe Rogan's JRE podcast over a music artist, with Neil Young departing the platform. So meaning, in terms of choosing which one to prioritize, whether Neil Young, a great music artist in his right, then the podcaster, well, obviously Spotify chose Joe Rogan in terms of its popularity, in terms of the revenue it generates, in terms of its ads. Now, whether it's the best one in the short run or in the long run, only time can tell, because obviously with the current situation getting worse in terms of people, discussing that, it's one thing that you have your own opinion on how you deal with certain situations, but it's another you talk about it that it's as if it's commonplace or it's something that everyone should would consider and even follow through. And if there are consequences, if you followed his advice, it may work for him or it may not. People would think that it may work for them, and that's the dilemma there, so to speak. Anyway, there have been reports regarding Spotify paying Rogan, which we mentioned it already. That's why he's on their platform right now. The issue here is some advertisements run to the Joe Rogan Experience that usher in a massive profit for Spotify whenever the ad plays. Now, obviously, if people are enthralled with the discussion in his podcast, people are willing to stick it out with the ads, and that may not be the same for the other contents. That's why they're betting on it, and obviously, paying 100 million is a small, measly small amount, I think, for the company if it generates a lot of subscribers, as well as a lot of paid advertisements within their platform, and which makes a boatload of money for Spotify here. So the recent pullout of Neil Young in Spotify is a call to other artists and record labels, obviously, which pertains to how Spotify is dealing with the situation. Obviously, they could have talked with Mr. Rogan here, and obviously, it's a hotly contested issue, and that's why it's important to approach it with some general sense of sensibility and practicality, and based on actual data. If you're going to recommend some other form of treatment, well, that's an alternative, but mentioning it over and over without any studies that support it, then we're just guessing here all the time here. Even the WHO which I'm too thrilled to hear, supports Young's boycotts of Spotify. Obviously, it's going to get a lot of news, which that's why I'm discussing it here today. But the point here is, does Neil Young has a point here with in terms of, does it promote COVID misinformation, which we don't want, because obviously we want to have a clear information of what the virus is, what it can do if we don't get vaccinated, and what are the risks if you don't take the vaccination. And obviously, as I mentioned, uh, it's not just yourself who's going to deal with the disease or the virus, it's your family and loved ones, because once you get infected, which can be asymptomatic, you're a carrier, you don't even know, can affect others without even you realizing, which I think that's the crux of the issue here. It's one thing that if you get sick, that cannot be transferred to other people, but this virus can be transmitted without you knowing it, and by then it's too late. Now obviously, many of the cases that tested positive, many of it just went away. You still get better, and then that's the end of it. But for some, could have an adverse effect, that could lead to fatality, which obviously we want to avoid as much as we can, or eliminate as much as we can. But at the end of the day, for businesses to support money over the welfare of the entire population can be tricky here. So how do you strike a balance? And obviously, Spotify has to think of being responsible. Is being responsible here, and I think Joe Rogan has to. And the fact that in the latest article here, another CNBC article here, Joe Rogan apologizes to Spotify and musician Amit Boyd. Not just apologize to Spotify, but apologize to the public, to the people who's an avid listener to him. That obviously, being a big TV personality, comes great power with great responsibility. Spider-Man, famous quote there, right? And the fact that it took Neil Young and Joni Mitchell to boycott the company, to cause a lot of issues, so that people are aware what's going on. And if it were someone else, no one would notice it, and no one would even care about it. And I think as a business, it makes sense. You want to generate the revenue, but obviously you want to communicate it with your partner here, in this case with Mr. Rogan, that not to say tone down the rhetoric, but obviously discuss both sides if it makes sense, right? If you're going to provide discussion on alternative medicine, obviously you provide discussion also on the vaccine that's being used for mass public. Otherwise, it's just a slap of the face on the rest of the public who got vaccinated, and then you're thinking of other alternatives as a better form to combat COVID-19. But that's just my opinion here. We'll see. I'll keep you updated with what will happen with Joe Rogan here.